Good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How's it going with you?
Not too bad. I was just taking a look at the pipeline. Your PR for stretch to stable.
Do you know what's I have like resynced test porter. I've looked in all of the repositories for stretch to like control F. I cannot find where it's pulling from. Is it like cache somewhere? I don't know.
So it's pulling stretch slim from Docker. So it looks like a Docker image that's getting run. So where's this? Build invocation.
Oh, I have it's if you take underneath where it pulls from stretch, it's setting a bunch of variables. And I search for those variables and it's I'll give you the code path in a second.
Please.
It's pulling up hackmd.
It almost looks like it's a bundle that was built already.
It's in the, oh, that might be it. Well, I thought it was just from so if you go to, if you go tests, integration, and then, where was it? There's like a Docker file in here.
You're talking about in Kubernetes plugins?
No, if you go, because what it's doing is it's pulling these like integration tests from like Porter, like Porter main. And so I thought, because test Porter it's like in the title, it says like, this is what we use for integration tests, which is why I'm like, I don't know why we're doing that. It's kind of silly. And test Porter was out of sync. So all of the like stable changes Carolyn made to move to from stretch to stable weren't updated. So that's what I thought it was. So there's a bunch of Docker files these integration tests run. Hi Ralph, good morning, afternoon.
Hello, hello.
Hi Brian.
Oh, it's a round.
Oh, wow. It looks so nice there. What is this? Hello.
Hey, bro.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Look at this show off.
Dude.
Hey,
House in Italy.
When you got it, you got it.
I'm just hanging out my Italian villa.
Yep.
Like cappuccino.
Well, at 5 p.m. and no, I don't have my glass of wine, which I should, but I don't.
Is that a violation of Italian thing?
Pretty much.
You go to jail now.
Straight to jail.
There's no question I would be dinged for it if it were publicly visible. Yeah, exactly. Except for there's some tractor that they've hired to mow the lawn right at this moment. And it's not like a lawn. This is like, like it's a little kind of, it's an orchard kind of thing with olive trees and plums and stuff like that. So it's like rough, right? And so this guy's got a tractor that can mow an entire building or something, just to take care of the underbrush. Anyway, hi, Brian.
How you doing?
I'm
Sounds like
okay.
you're doing pretty good. Yeah.
No, I'm doing okay. I have to say that Italy, because it's a tourist destination, tells everybody always like, oh, he's in Italy. It's like, yeah, but if you are there and you live there, it's just another goddamn country.
Yeah.
It's like, it's nice when it's nice and not when it's not, just like every other place. So there's that. Like we're busy trying to do fancy things with her family, my wife's family, is trying to remodel a house in a very small way, and the bureaucracy is nuts. Not because Italy's any worse, but just it's always, remodeling is the same everywhere.
Uh,
There's stuff to do.
There's
Which
always some
Sarah,
kind of hoop
I
to jump
believe-
through. Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, you will at some point soon learn this.
no. We don't, my house is going perfect. There are no problems with it at all. Moved in and it wasn't like there was a hot tub I was supposed to get on all of the documentation that we signed, and then the hot tub was missing yesterday. No, that's not what happened. It's totally there. It was totally there.
It's a blessing and a curse. They come with baggage. So.
Yeah, some bullets you just take, and I was like, what do I do? Like, do I tell them to bring it back? Like, I'm not doing that. And the worst part was there's like if you walk down like a pathway, there's a brewery. So my partner and I went to the brewery after like looking at the house and like clapping at it. And the person we bought the house from, her name was Kim, and her husband is very tall. And shockingly, a big party sits next to us, and a woman's name was Kim, and they cheered to selling their house, and the husband was very tall. And I was like, what do I confront them? Do I be like, where's the hot tub? Bring it back. So just kind of let it slide. I'm learning patience.
Wow, you are very kind, because if you remove a fixture or anything else like from the home, that is a contract violating offense.
Yeah.
Get a new hot tub out of it. Don't ask for the other one back.
I like sent it to my realtor. I was like, the hot tub's gone, and he just didn't respond. And I was like, well, I guess you got your money, so what's the point? Like, it's only my problem now, so it's like whatever. Cool.
Trying to think of who the correct person is to go after that hot tub for you. I don't know if it's the realtor.
Call the police. Hello, my hot tub's gone. Like, they're just like, okay. Cool. All right. So I didn't know if anyone had any things they wanted to bring up today, or we can just chit chat about the goings on of Porter. Brian, I'm gonna guess since Steven started his new job, you're kind of under the bus for everything, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Ralph, what did you want to say?
No, I wanted to talk about the operator and getting things up and running and so forth. Brian, we have people internally at Microsoft who are busy they like the operator. They want to make sure that it works and the whole thing. You're dorking around with it with Steven. Are you like, where are you when you look at the operator? Like, how do you see it in terms of its functionality, where it should be,
Yeah, actually, with that demo project, which is just kind of distillation of stuff I was working on in the past in a public format, it's teasing out some of the next level things. Like I filed a feature or call it an issue, call it a feature request, but like the Porter config resource for the operator doesn't support configuration for telemetry. And that was like, that's literally what I was working on this week. I was putting in open telemetry into that demo, putting in a Jaeger dashboard to showcase Porter's ability to send all that telemetry data to be visualized. And so it looks like it's a minor feature enhancement. It's just a tweak to a spec, but it's not, right now the operator doesn't fully support the complete Porter config as it stands right now. So, so I've been using that demo project to kind of tease out more of these use cases and look for those kind of feature gaps in the operator. So.
Cool.
That sounds great. I think the tractor just went by. That sounds great. We obviously, the expectation for everybody would be that the operator fully supports Porter, so obviously that anything that you find that, deviates from the way that Porter works, in standalone, is obviously a candidate for adding that feature. One of the things that happened internally, so one of the things that happened from people that were working around this internally, they were trying to get it running on, was it Kind? It was Kind, I think.
He was running it on Minikube first.
Minikube, right? Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, we're running it on Kind, but I heard
switched.
some talk about that. Yeah, Stephen mentioned.
Right, and so basically they stumbled into some. The operator overview doesn't work the same. The dock doesn't work properly yet. They also stumbled on the fact that they opened up a metrics endpoint, and they thought it was really that was somehow blocking the installation, but it turned out it was mistaken. But it does open up a metrics endpoint. But I think that's for just Kubernetes metrics. So there were a few other things there, but it became clear reading through the kind of the README that
the docs aren't up to date.
Yeah, the docs are not up to date. And so sort of like high order bit is because you are all working on this, and because people at our company are working on all this, we're going to try and focus on seeing what we can do to bring the docs up to date with what exists now. So any of your notes and things like that, I'll probably reach out to hit you up for whatever isn't, formalized in the doc. And we'll try and get it. I'll try and work hard to see if I can help everybody get that doc up to date and do the PR submissions and, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully I can document any variations that are between Kind and Minikube and something like AKS. That would be really, really nice. And so once we get there, then we can sit there and say, okay, look, that stuff all works. Let's start churning on the features that we need to knock out to make it all work.
And
that kind of thing.
It's been a while since I've used Minikube, but adding that as a additional option in the demo, and then you just do an overlay for it to address the differences of a deployment to Minikube versus
right, exactly,
AKS or Kind,
or Kind or any other distribution, right? Like that's the point is, like I would love to have the other clouds and DigitalOcean documented as well. There's nothing but goodness there. So we'll try and get it there.
My MO is to get it working in the demo and then write the docs based on getting it working in the demo.
Right.
So it's a repeatable way to have it set up.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody inside has figured out how to make a Porter bundle. This is on the same team starting to dork around with it. And they made a Porter bundle for AKS to set up a cluster, and then another Porter bundle to install the operator. So that one doesn't use Argo or any of the other, fancy dancy stuff that you've been doing. But it's very straightforward. And that the cool thing about that one is, at least that's kind of the vanilla process to like see it works. And then the kind of stuff you're doing is fantastic because it's just an augmentation that can show how much better it can be too. Let's see. The interesting thing about those two bundles is if we can get those up and running, they of course use Azure stuff, right? As resource. We can get those up and running. It's possible that we could even use those for things like dependency work and stuff like that, right? Because essentially the Porter operator should install, and the dependency is that you have a cluster, and it doesn't really matter what the cluster is per se. And so maybe that's something we can use as we go down the pike into dependencies. But that was my big thing. I wanted to just chat and let you know that we're gonna light you up on Slack as the PM tortures himself over Porter operator and trying to make the docs. And I'm basically going to kind of rework the doc so it just goes. And then we mark out the variations for the stuff that you're doing or other people are doing with Kind and Minikube and things like that. And hopefully we get that experience down. That was
Yeah,
big.
and just so
That's
you
my
know,
big.
yeah, one of my goals was to have it so the demo project is actually delivered as a bundle ultimately.
Right, of course.
And like I have a different bundle that I did where it was a Kind Nginx unit deployment demo that was for a previous KubeCon, and it, because it allowed Docker host access, it would just literally like set up the Kind cluster and do all that work like the demo does on someone's laptop in order to
Right.
see an example of a product. And then like, you know, the Nginx sales booth was like giving out details of it to people who come up to the booth and stuff like that. And so I've got examples of those kind of workflows, but along the way, I'm interested in getting it so the Kubernetes mix-in for Porter supports customize and overlays too. As more of a first-class citizen there, just to make it easier to go from these overlay workflows to just making a bundle out of them, and even potentially have it so that you can just pass in a parameter into the bundle saying what overlay you want on top of it. You know?
I have a ton of questions for you and everyone here, so everyone buckle in. Right now we're talking about Kind and Minikube as like the two tools that I don't know what's the best way, Docker-esque tools that people are using. Are there any other
developer
tools?
Workflows? Yeah.
Oh God, don't. We're gonna start saying things like synergy, and I'm just gonna be. I can't.
How about
I
time
can't.
and process?
Ugh. What should we look, as I'm looking forward to, like, people are starting to adopt the operator, and UX and UI is like a big issue we're having right now. What are the tools for developers that we need to make sure we support? Kind, Minikube, anything else on the plate?
K3Ds.
K3S, yeah.
So one of the
The
reasons
Rancher
K3D is
stuff in.
interesting is, because
So you can do it as an all as embedded. Yeah, I've worked a lot with that in the past.
yeah, it's very popular. The interesting thing about K3Ds is that Nuno Carmo, who used to be well, still is a Docker captain, but he works for Rancher now, and Rancher's doing their desktop stuff. Nuno Carmo is a WSL expert with K3Ds. And so basically he has a whole list, like 30 different distros, and just uses Porter to flip a distro right into WSL. And so turned out K3Ds was perfect for that. And K3Ds is perfect as a distro in WSL. So that platform works really well. Obviously, I'm talking about Microsoft stuff and not Linux per se, even though the VM's Linux inside. So I do hear mainly people not using Minikube so much anymore. And the people that use Minikube that I bump into are people who started in Kubernetes early on, when Minikube is really the only thing you could use if you didn't stand it up, physically. But in that environment now, David and Brian, I'd be interested in hearing what you think. Really, I only hear kind and K3Ds for developer experience now.
Yeah, usually when I see someone using Minikube, you show them Kind, and they're like, "Oh, okay, let me move over to that." I mean, I've used Kind in like GitLab pipelines where you can like in 30 seconds have a multi-node cluster up and running in a CI job, and you're testing your workloads on top of it, and it's just it can be really efficient in processes like that.
Okay.
And then the other one is of course Docker Desktop, which it has its own like distribution sort of thing. But I've not heard anybody using it in conjunction with Porter.
I don't know. I think that'll be I'm not worried about desktop. What was the other question I had? Oh, I have many. As far as like demos, we have the Argo demo currently, which I think is really good because people like Argo's kind of blown up the last 3 years. It used to be something I didn't think anyone was going to use, and now everyone's using it. So are there other ideas for demos we should add into a demos folder that like kind of I can start kicking people to go build, or I can go build them, that, you know, is like a common operator experience?
Yeah, but this is where getting the, you know, my motivation behind getting the telemetry stuff in there and really
Right.
just showcasing that aspect of things. Yeah, it's really, you know, the first thing I think of is when you have something like this deployed is how do you start troubleshooting installations at scale? And so I'm, you know, yeah, I guess the telemetry stuff is the first thing that comes to mind with that.
Yeah, so like, and I can also speak to some larger customers that are using this. So there are some large customers at Microsoft that use Porter, and they have, you know, bundles that deploy on the order of 30 plus services of various sorts, not just Azure services, but they bring along all kinds of fun custom stuff from the open source world and their own stuff. And one of the interesting things that they do is that they basically pound the logs like you can't believe. And so there's this kind of interesting distinction to be made in the real world at scale between having the logs available to you, which is one thing, having the ability to do custom detection, custom actions for specific kinds of telemetry and so forth, which is what I've seen people do. So, and then things like what we would normally call telemetry, like, you know, where did this hang up? Where did this not hang up? And so forth. So for example, as you can imagine, one of the things that happened with more complex scenarios that I've been involved with would be that people would be running and it would fail on the, say, you know, 7th out of 10 steps, right? And they would immediately go, okay, great, I got to rerun this. You know, I've got to fix, I think I know what's going on here. He looked at the output, you know, okay, I rerun it. And now your bundle doesn't deploy because some of your previous steps are not idempotent, right?
Yeah.
So what will happen there is people get really, really irritated not having state. And so the state functionality where you could just pick up state and rerun it, and if it was there, turned out to be really, really useful, a la Terraform and other DSCs. So these are different layers of problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was one layer was the actual logs that come out that say, here, you're in this step and it blew chunks in the following fashion. And this is what we did, and, you know, whatever, and you got to go figure it out. One of the other aspects that we always wanted to do and never got a chance to do was be able to debug it, right? So you should be able to, and you cannot now really, you should be able to actually have the VS Code Porter extension debug the YAML as you step through, right? And that was another thing that had to do with, it's a completely different level of problem solving, right? So I think what would really be useful is to try and figure out exactly what everybody thinks different problem solving paths require to solve them most efficiently. The logs got to be there for sure.
Yeah.
Right? That's not even an issue. You'll notice the installations and the runs, you've got runs for logs, and then you've got installations, and the way you display installations is kind of interesting because it's basically a collection of all the state that for a particular bundle that you've been trying to work against. And the state, the only thing that changes is like whether it's installed or not installed, did that succeed? What's the last action and so forth. And you got to dive into the runs in order to figure out what happened with all those with that installation. That's interesting, but it turns out that that's really only interesting for you to figure out what got run, not what failed. You can use it to find out what failed and then dive into the logs, right? But it's a different kind of activity, a mental activity. Operationally, you'd want the ability to debug so that you could like basically work it out locally and not have a problem when you get to like having to run a 37 stage, you know, CI/CD pipeline every time. And that's a different way of thinking about it. So when you talk about telemetry from your point of view, which kind of slice of the telemetry pie are you thinking about?
It's definitely the like looking at failed installs and along the way. Like that's, you know, I've run into these issues before where, and you see this with Terraform development, you know, as in the process of crafting Terraform, you always end up leaving cruft around until you really get it dialed in. And then you got to go in and there's all kinds of brute force ways to go clean that up and do that kind of iterative development on it. Yeah, anything that lets you kind of dive in and troubleshoot that live is helpful. Like, I mean, you know, like I use K9S a lot, and just the ability to shell into a running job and troubleshoot from inside of an active image in the cluster or something like that. I find that to be really valuable. And it, you know, that similar workflow dawns on me for Porter of like it would be nice to be able to go in and interactively troubleshoot a failed install.
Okay, so that's an interesting one, right? Also, so the high order bit here that you're thinking of is troubleshooting failed installs, and so.
And that's in a development context more, because that's like the bundle craftsman.
VS Code style debugging is one.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like
right.
You get.
So the idea we had.
Bundle refinement.
Yeah, exactly. My internet connection is still flaky, so I'm going to turn my video off. So the idea we had was that basically we could run your YAML and step through the YAML and populate the values that result, jumping from one task to the next. And that alone would help you like fix each step almost instantaneously versus running the whole damn thing, right? That's right. One aspect. We thought we could do that, and we actually demonstrated it at some point, but we never got a chance to really dive in and do it seriously. We couldn't debug, say, the code that way, right? Like you can't jump into your mix. We actually thought you could jump. It was hard to jump into the container, the actual exec, right? For Porter, but it could be done. The thing that would have been useful is we were thinking about whether you could jump in to the mix-in, right? Because you could even debug mix-ins on that level, right? From the path. Okay, so that's one category of things. One of the things we did do, one of the things I ended up doing with the largest customer that we have using this is basically figuring out how to jump in and live debug the container, right? The actual bundle installation container, the installation image. And so I trust that you do that, Brian.
Yeah, not necessarily native in Porter, but I will, yeah, as much as possible, get into
so
these jobs and debug it. You know, I mean, yeah, this is one of those pros and cons of delivering things in Scratch containers too. You know.
Right, exactly. I'm right with you. So yeah, there is, so that area is something that I used to do quite a bit. All I did was I would build it in Ubuntu or something like that, and then we would do that in Ubuntu, and then for production we would switch to Scratch, right? Yeah, I don't know if you're getting the background of the tractor. Am I still?
That's not that bad, Ralph. No,
No.
it's just mainly you. So
Right.
good.
I'm the only annoying factor here, audio wise. Although he's getting closer, I'm going to get swamped by bits and pieces. So, well, we can stop the conversation there, but there were actually a series of steps that all involve failure cases, but they involve failure cases at different stages of operation. So one is like, I'm getting the bundle working, so I'm doing iterative debugging, essentially the inner loop of development, right? You just done you're working on an installation, and it's like you drop in this and it should work, but it doesn't work. So you got to go and drop in printf statements or something like this, or you modify some parameter or credential or whatever it might be, and then you rerun your bundle and you try it again, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's things that happen in operational time, right? That you actually think the bundle is fine, and it's deploying, it's working, it's great, and then you run across failures. And that's sort of different, because you really do need to dig into the logs or do something more serious to figure out, because as far as you were concerned, it worked, right? And then you ended up hitting some condition where potentially upgrade didn't had some requirement you didn't know about, things like this. So we probably should kind of try and define what aspects of telemetry can help and where they have the biggest impact. For me, the biggest impact would be the ability to actually step through debugging with the YAML, because you wouldn't have to rerun the whole CI/CD.
Like being able to give names to steps in the bundle and run and install up to a certain step.
Right. Yeah. So the one we had was like, you could, like, when you got to the first step of install, right, you would stop on the first line of the YAML, and basically all the credentials were available to you, right, in the local variables. So you would have all the credentials, like masked out credentials, but they would be there. And you could potentially toggle them to unmask, but you would also have the arguments there and things like this, and access to the state and stuff like that. You could all have, because that's all runtime information, and it's what you really need to know if the code in that step is really going to work, right? Like, typically you'll be able to sit there and look at this and go, oh crap, there's a typo in the argument, kind of thing, or whatever it might be. So that one was really kind of the way we were going to do it. When we talked about it, Carolyn had been very gung-ho that she wanted to debug it down to the core and even pursue the mix-ins and things like this, but that required a fundamental rebuilding of the way Porter worked. And she thought she could do it where the mix-ins were containers.
Yeah, that was the guy that was being discussed even from security aspects too, and only the appropriate layer gets the credentials.
Yeah, mix-ins as containers is still a great idea, right? It's absolutely a great idea, and especially from the security standpoint, but it also works from the debugging standpoint, because it's just another container to mount, and then you jump in and you know what it is, and so forth. But definitely that area is an area to think about.
Cool. I have more questions. I'm gonna
go.
I'm gonna ask a sidebar question, then we can come back to this, because I have questions about security, like RBAC and things like that, but we'll touch on that later. I wanted to get your kind of like where you're at and how I and we can support you as far as like the gRPC PR, V1.0. I know there's like a lot, and now that Steven's working, I don't know how much support or like time you have or what is going on in your life. So I just want to know, how can we kind of, like, what's going on? How can I support you?
Yeah, the gRPC work, there's just some, I think some minor stuff to address to get that into the
It's
fold
mostly
there.
naming shit and like reorganization of the files. So it was all nitty, you know.
But I think I also wanted to do it so that we're doing a build without, you know, we can feature flag or hide, you know, use a build time variable to like not build in that the ability to run it in the released version of the Porter command line and just have an image with that server service in it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, and throwing it behind like an operator flag and just even naming the server operator, because like Porter operator as like a CLI thing, I think that would provide a lot of clarity going forward. I think we were talking about data and like other names, and I was like, I don't know if this is just like the gRPC server for the operator right now. You can just call operator and just like name it something else later. So that's all. That's all you though.
Yeah. But yeah, really, it's, you know, and I'm putting together that demo environment basically to have that kind of environment to sanity check development as it's happening and everything. Okay. But yeah, as for time, yeah, I'm actively looking for employment right now, and we'll be jumping on opportunities as they come up. So I thought I had a job lined up already, and it went away yesterday. So I'm continuing to look. Yeah. Financing. Yeah. So I'm balancing everything right now with putting energy into a job search. So, but that being said, I'm spending a lot of time just working on Porter because I enjoy it and probably delaying things I should be doing instead.
Hey, I take that as a win, but if you get interested in HashiCorp jobs, I have connections. So
I may have to ping you about that. Yeah, I have a friend who's a manager over there. So we'll see. His name's Tom Wojcik. I worked with him on Nginx controller for a little while.
Okay. Sounds briefly similar. But yeah, for Boundary Console or like any of those tools, I'm happy to throw you over. Also for there's like an SRE team for HCP if you're into that. I don't know if they have headcount right now, but I do not want you going
sidebar about that.
Yeah. Cool.
It's wrong to say that we want you unemployed for a long time, Brian.
Right,
that would be wrong.
But yeah, you know, my motivation is like I'm trying to get the demo together plus a little write-up blog and to try to lead into a KubeCon presentation around some of this as well. So, and I know there's deadlines in June kind of coming up, or this month.
Yeah, they are. Anything you can do, you want us to do that we can possibly do to help us support you in that effort, you know, definitely ping, because we certainly think that, you know, this is a great scenario for it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then as far as like resources go, do you still need hookups with the Azure stuff? And then I wanted to touch base on, there's one more thing, and it just left my brain, which is super sick. So I just want to make sure you were supported on any endeavors like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Azure stuff, I mean, ultimately, I just want to have that be an overlay option in the demo and provide all the Terraform. So anybody can just go in and the Terraform will deploy to their Azure subscription and they run the Azure overlays, and it's the workflow is exactly the same in that repo. So.
Okay.
And then, you know, then like DigitalOcean, whatever other clouds we want to add in there too.
I have bundles that create AKS clusters, right? And so I can actually, you know, just go and grab that and update it. When you say overlay, what do you mean? Can you
that's a customized concept of you just specify.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so like you have these base manifests that will deliver like the base Argo workflows, the base Porter operator deployment, the base source manager, all the little components that make all this up, the open telemetry operator, the Jaeger operator. And then you can have a base set of manifests, and then you use a customized resource type to do an overlay and then you call your overlay and it references the base and then just says, oh yeah, for this particular deployment to this cloud, we need to generate these kinds of secrets, inject them in all over the place. We're namespacing differently. So it just captures all the variances between the deployment options. And it's all kube native, and kubectl just runs it. It's all built into kubectl. No extra tooling.
I think your idea of having this run on multiple clouds is something I didn't think about, but also would really sell it at KubeCon as not just a Microsoft product.
Oh yeah. No, right. I was doing this. This is what I was doing before. So I have all, I've done this.
You have it running on like DO and Google. If I can go to the CNCF and ask them for like $10 whole, do you think you could get like, could I deploy the Argo demo onto those clouds as well?
That's what I'm working towards.
Okay.
Yeah. I've done that for other projects, and I'm just getting it in place for that project as well. Yeah. If you look at the structure of the make file in there, you set one variable equal to the name of your cloud and run make deploy, and it will go in and run the overlay for that cloud.
Yeah.
I just haven't put in additional clouds. It's all kind right now. I always flesh it all out with kind and local, and then add in the layers for the other clouds.
Makes absolute sense.
Cool.
So I've chatted in there, but I think Customize is a great way to do this. And so if you get it up and running, I will go ahead and give you, we'll chat about that again, but I'll get you AKS clusters, whatever resources you need to deploy to. Like that's all fine and easy to do. So I'll hit you up offline and we'll do that in Slack. And then for things like DO, I have a DO sub. So we can do the same thing with DO, and you can use that to get it up and running. And if it's a customized thing, a Porter thing, which is CNCF, it runs in DO, it runs in AKS, and you'll be able to do an overlay for, like GKE or whatever you want to do. In theory, that should just be the bomb, right? Like it should just be fantastic.
Yeah, and ultimately, like the goal is to make a bundle out of that demo project. And I can point, I'll send a link when I dig it out of a former coworker of mine where we were collaborating on. It was called Observability in a Box, where it was a demo of a single bundle that sets up everything to show open telemetry, working with all these other things. And it uses the current dependency functionality in Porter to basically have one repo spits out a bunch of individual bundles, but then it has like a roll-up bundle that just references all those other bundles as dependencies and puts an entire thing together. So I think it's possible to have something that functionally works right now with the state of Porter, but also use it as that reference example as dependencies are enhanced and get it into the new dependency model. So I tend to think I was a product owner at one point in time. I tend to think of like, okay, end of sprint demo. Like I want to, seeing it, like this is an end of sprint demo environment, and you can just layer new functionality into the demo as part of the delivery after every sprint. So.
I love that. Yeah, I think that would be really great to showcase at KubeCon if we can, but honestly, just in general, just to show operators, human operators, what they can do. As far as KubeCon goes, is there anything you need from us? I mean, I will kick Ralph to give you as much money as I can pull out of Ralph's wallet. But I mean, as far as like submitting CFPs or getting you connected with anyone in the CFCF or our tag, I started reaching out about the white paper to see what tag we're in. Apparently we're in the app delivery tag. So I'm going to reach out to them to see if they will publish your white paper when it is ready. But as far as like talks and KubeCons, you need anything?
Yeah, I honestly, the one thing I need is just a little poking and prodding to keep me on track with deadlines, because I'm in this weird ambiguous zone of like every day is Blur's Day to me right now. And I have to set a lot of calendar reminders to like keep track of these deadlines. So but yeah, I'm trying to set like weekly goals for myself to deliver on some of this, and I want to make sure I'm prioritizing anything that's related to a KubeCon presentation.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And proving to myself I've got everything together to have something compelling to show, which is why I got the demo project out there first, you know.
I think once we merge your demo into like main operator too, we can like build issues off of it, and then I can just tag you and ping you. But I'm in the same like, holy hell, there's a lot to go on, and like trying to figure out organization and like just kind of like juggling way too many things. So I think these biweekly meetings are nice for me just to be like, hey, how are you doing? How can I help? The last thing I wanted to touch on as we loop back, sorry, lots of things in my brain. And if you have things you want to, just feel free to say no and like continue talking. We were talking about demos and we were talking about telemetry a bunch. And I wanted to see what we're doing with the operator as far as like RBAC and security. If we're tying in things, can I have different human operators run different bundles and we can see like, hey, a porter says, or this is like high level. I don't know that much about RBAC and Kubernetes, but if like I have 2 human operators, can they only execute certain things? And like, can we show that? Because it would be dope.
Yeah, that's a great example. And yeah, I think we are in a position because, you know, with setting all that stuff up, the final stuff you're always working on is tweaking RBAC for things and getting all these roles and role binding, all that. And so having it, instead of deploying all to a single Kubernetes namespace, having it deploy so the operator can run against 2 different namespaces, and how operator A can only do things in their namespace and operator B can only do things in their namespace. It's like, I think we have all the structure in place there in the demo project. It's about chopping it up.
Sarah also mentioned an interesting concept, which is that the RBAC could even be extended to bundles. We don't have the bits to do that, as far as I can see. We have the bits to do namespacing in the traditional Kubernetes way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You could restrict where installation resources for the porter operator are allowed. And one of the features we have coming into the operator, I don't know if it's a feature, it's a fix, I think. We're reducing the scope so that the porter config is per Kubernetes namespace, because we were dealing with this issue where on a per installation basis in a namespace, in a Kubernetes namespace, you could reference different porter configs, and that really makes it crazy to wrangle. And so removing that and allowing it on a per Kubernetes namespace means here you have this one porter config for operator A, and it's pointing to a totally different persistent store for porter than operator B in a different Kubernetes space. So then you have totally isolated storage of what porter is using for those Kubernetes namespaces.
Yeah. So I think of this as being able, we can do basic namespace controls using RBAC. Advanced RBAC controls, I don't think we have the bits to do, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to think about it as we go forward.
I think with more adoption, it'll be like a thing that I get kicked about more, you know, that we all get kicked about more, is, you know, more granular control. And I think we talked about this before, but tying into AD, tying into Boundary, tying into like all of those other tools for this type of stuff, for Porter Main even, would be dope as hell. But like, that's like down the road. But I think like showing how we can tie in and like further progress Porter into tying into those like key Kubernetes resources would be great. Cool.
What else you got?
Nah, that was it. I touched on all my points.
That was it?
Yeah, it was, how do I help my maintainers? How do I lift them up to the realms of the heavens? And who do I need to kick to do that? And then also users and user experience. Because if we have a bad user experience, we're not gonna have users. So that's been my huge push. Everyone knows that. So other than that, that's it. Does anyone have any closing comments or things that you want to bring to my attention? PRs, issues, whatever. Justice fixed my ADO problem that I've been kicking and like whining about for like over a day.
No, you got to be kidding me.
Oh my! I knew it was a version issue. I knew it.
That was totally a value add.
Oh, it's so mad. But now I know
was
how.
Was that that image going away?
Yeah.
Or is this different? Yeah.
No. So like we updated most of it to the stable Debian version, but except for the Kubernetes plugin, which I saw was failing. And I was like, oh, okay, it's just this one. Well, then like it was still running the old image in ADO. So I was like, oh, like
yeah,
it's this thing out of thing.
Failed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's pulling like this old, it's like pulling like a old release of Porter. And that has the old images. So I just need to update the Porter.
Yeah.
But we have this weird, maybe you might know about it. We have a test Porter repo, which is a fork of Porter main. I don't know, Justice, were you able to point out, are we running anything off of that? Or are we just running off of Porter main? My idea to figure this out was I was going to delete test Porter and see if CI just breaks, but I don't know.
As far as I could tell, it's coming off of a main Porter repository as opposed to a test Porter. I think it's like you said, it was like DNS or versioning, right? It's always that. So I think if you bump that version, I'm guessing it's gonna use the slim images.
I'm gonna do that. And then I'm done with ADO and I'm never looking at it for like 2 weeks.
Until ADO wants you to look at it again. Right?
Till it starts screaming. I've been having this issue where like I run the pipeline on Dependapot's like updates and it doesn't report back that it succeeded. And like half of me is just like, I'll just merge it. Like it passed, but the other part of me is like, I should really figure out what this is reporting. So I don't know. It fixed, we had a new contributor come in and it ran on their PR. And so that's pretty dope.
It could have been a GitHub API outage during that period of time. Like it's just, I could have missed that callback.
And think about that.
Oh yeah. GitHub flakiness, especially when you're not paying, is one of those things that is more common than you might think.
CNCF is paying. I found out as I was digging through our plan. We have the business plan through CNCF, so pretty bougie.
Yes. Well, all that means is that you get accelerated help when things flake on GitHub, as opposed to the slow boat from Asia version of the help.
Do you think if I pretend to be Brendan, they'll help me faster? If I'm like, hello. No, they just won't.
One of the most
me.
interesting things I can say about GitHub being a Microsoft company is that they have, and for very good reason, stuck hard and fast to the model that they treat everybody absolutely neutrally, which means that it is impossible for me to reach into GitHub and kick some machinery to go fast. It just doesn't work that way. And that's actually correct. What most people don't know is several features they launched and enabled them with our major cloud competitors before us. And so they're pretty rigorous about it. So it turns out that pulling rank with GitHub just is historically useless effort.
That's fair. Cool. Well, I added a bunch of notes in the meeting notes here. If anyone has anything to add, I'll post it in the chat. I just don't know if I did it right, but I tried. And then cool. I'll see you all on the internet. If you need me, just DM me on Slack.
Sounds great. Cool. I've got my PR commitments ready.
Yeah, I will message you daily if I do not see progress. Do not worry.
That is absolutely the right thing to do. Take care, Brian. Take care, David.
Right, thanks. See y'all.
Thanks, y'all. Later.